All right, we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's podcast of Battle Tested History. Tonight's show is in tribute to Jeff Thompson. This was a show that Jeff and I had planned. We were going to do it first week of May, the death of Adolf Hitler. And we were going to do it around the time it would have been the 78th anniversary of his cowardly suicide. But unfortunately, that's when Jeff fell ill. So Dan and I are going to be doing it tonight. Jeff, this one's for you. So the three movies we picked, there's really only three movies about the death of Adolf Hitler. Is Alec Guinness in Hitler, The Last 10 Days, 1973. The Bunker with Anthony Hopkins as Adolf Hitler, 1981. And then 2004, Downfall, which was a huge blockbuster movie with Bruno Ganz as Hitler. And he made the best Hitler of them all. He did. Yeah, he had. I read somewhere where he studied hours and hours of footage of Hitler at Nuremberg rallies and giving speeches to get the mannerisms down and that. This is a fascinating topic because there are so many variant versions of this. And we'll get into like with the Magda children. So many people reported seeing the same event in a different light that it's not 100% certain what actually happened. So that's why, like, if you watch the movies, you know, what happened in this movie may differ from what happened in this movie. It may not be as much historical inaccuracy as who they're based, you know, which account are they basing the death of Hitler on.
Or what they chose to focus on.
Yeah.
Because I noticed a difference. Each movie focused a little heavier on different aspects.
Yes. Yeah. The first one, 1971, Alec Guinness, he did an okay role, but it was so over-dramatized. Yes, Hitler was in the bunker. Yes, he spent his last few months there. But in the... Fred, I gotta go lay down. But in the Alec Guinness version, Hitler was played as having a good time. He was out. He was chatting with people. He was having tea parties. Before we begin, let's say hi to our friends who are here. Angel
Ramon.
Yes, it's good to see you, Angel. And anonymous Facebook user. That might be the FBI guy who keeps tabs on me. Oh, all right. I hope I get killed off well in your book. You're going to die well in mine. Fred.
Nice. And Angel, thank you for the book. I love the inscription.
Oh, I've got to get my copy of the second one. Oh, the other dude is Jack. Hi, Jack. The first movie's not all that good. It's, like I was saying, it portrays Hitler as if nothing's happened. He's vibrant. He's walking around. He's talking. They're having tea parties and dinner parties. And it really was a very bad take on it. It was ironically based on a book by the secretary, Traudl Junge.
Yeah.
Who was the main character in the second one. And I haven't read her book yet. I just ordered it. You can see the Amazon box on the end table. It's not that good. There's some, like, two things in the book that I wondered, why did you do it? Fegelein. And for those of you who don't know, the story of Fegelein was married to Eva Braun's sister. He was an asshole. He was having an affair. He was trying to find a way to sneak out of Berlin against orders. Hitler ordered him arrested. stripped him of his rank and that. But because he was Eva Braun's brother-in-law, all he did was throw him in jail. Then when it found out that Himmler was betraying Hitler and was trying to cut a deal with the Allies, Hitler got furious and had Fengele executed. Now, they took him outside and shot him outside the bunker. I don't know why in Hitler the Last 10 Days, they hanged him inside the bunker. That was like, didn't do anything for dramatic effect. And then the other one was Krebs. General Krebs kills himself right after Hitler's death. General Krebs did not do that. He killed himself in the bunker along with General Bergdorf. But they did that 2 days after Hitler's suicide, after they went and tried to negotiate a peace agreement with General Chukov, who the Soviet commander who had taken Berlin. And he said, pretty much, no, you've lost. There's no negotiations, unconditional surrender or else. So Bergdorf and Krebs went back and committed suicide. But those little historical inaccuracies, just like, I'm a big, huge history buff. It just grated on me. Now, did you or did you not see that movie? I know you didn't get to see them all.
Yeah, I did not watch that one. I watched part of The Bunker.
The Bunker. Yeah.
And I watched all of Downfall. And then I watched a whole bunch of different documentaries that I found. Some of them were kind of crappy. Some of them were really good. I specifically, I like a couple documentaries I watched where they interviewed that secretary. I can't remember her name. In Downfall, I just called her the hot secretary.
Travel Junge.
Yeah, Junge. So, but the problem is she's very old and she didn't tell her story right away. And, let's face it, over time, over age, you forget little details or things look different in your mind.
Yeah.
And so you may feel like you're telling the truth, but you may actually not be quite so truthful.
Well, Travel Junge I find her fascinating because if you watch if you watch Downfall, she seems very contrite at the end about why as a young girl did she fall for this. And she tells the story about, she later saw when she was in, I think it was Munich, she saw she was talking about, she saw the statue dedicated to like Suzanne Scholl. I don't remember her first name. Scholl was the same age as Junge when Junge became Hitler's secretary. Scholl was part of a resistance movement with 3 other guys, and they were caught by the Gestapo, brutally tortured and executed. So, she's making the comparison about, why wasn't I thinking her? But you watch the earlier interviews with her. I've seen her on The World at War from the 1970s. She's full-fledged Hitler all the way.
That's the funny thing, because in the movie toward the end, they gave that contemplation where she's kind of like, why did I do this? Why did I fall in with these? She didn't reach that until she was way old, according to most of the documentaries and even the interviews. She would mention it wasn't until she was, I don't know, in her 60s that she started actually going, well, even though I shouldn't have done that, I'm still Nazi.
Yeah.
And Downfall made it look like she was in love with him. Like, she was like, hey, you want a mistress? I'll do it. That's the way I felt whenever they had scenes with just two actors.
There was a lot of the secretaries were enamored of him. And from everything I've ever read, he was very good to his secretaries. He liked them. He treated them well. And they played that up in The Bunker. Like
they did?
Well, not The Bunker. I'm sorry.
In Downfall, they played that up huge.
The opening scene when she makes mistakes and he's like, let's try this again. And then you see the difference between how he treated his secretaries and how he treated the generals.
Right. They some of the documentaries kept saying that he was bipolar, which I think they're not using that correct. But I did notice in throughout several different versions of him, especially during his last days, there was two Hitlers. There was the one that was, I'm in charge. I'm the god, and then there's the one that's the caring guy, which everybody said you didn't see very often unless you worked with them every day.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, because I'm not as big into this as you, but that movie also portrayed him as basically he's turned into his last days. He like totally lost everything.
Oh, yeah.
1 minute he's like, I don't care, do whatever you want. Next minute he's like, Himmler did what? Execute that fucker.
Yeah. He was, by the end, and they play up a lot of it in the bunker. Oh, and by the way, Allison pointed out it was Sophie Scholl and the White Rose Society. We got to see her. We got to see the monument dedicated to her when we were in Munich. He was effed up at that point. He was on so many drugs. Dr. Morell, who they talked about quite a bit in the bunker, the second version, he had him on so many drugs that he was just absolutely, he was losing it. Plus, there was the depression. He was trapped in the bunker. He was losing it. But, one thing I liked about the bunker plays up on it a little bit, but so does Downfall, is nobody, even in those last few days, nobody wanted to piss him off because they were afraid of what would happen.
Exactly. So it's like they kept withholding critical information because they didn't want to get executed.
Yeah.
Make him mad he had you shot.
Yeah.
At the same time, they're fighting with themselves going, he really should know that the commander he's counting on to get back to Berlin to save his ass, they're way the hell over here. There's no way they're getting here. They're surrounded. They're not breaking that line.
Yeah.
I thought that was good. And that's something I saw in other documentaries as well. Yeah. So I've had to piece my knowledge together from all these different sources and just kind of see the connections, which could be wrong.
It was, from every account I read, it was a horrifying time. Fred, go lay down. Please excuse me. I think
he wants his say.
I think Fred likes Hitler, and therefore he's arguing with me. I gave you a treat. Now, one thing about the bunker I did not like is, the one thing about the bunker I wanted to mention. It's based on a book written by John O'Donnell. And John O'Donnell, he was a reporter, and most of the people who were in the bunker were held, those who survived, were held by the Soviets until the 50s, mid to late 50s, and then were released. He gathered them all together, and he interviewed every single one of them. And he was raised up with Nazi history. Oh, Fred, yeah. He even admits, and his character in the movie admits, this may not be accurate because the Soviets kept on bringing these people back to the bunker and had them reenact the whole thing. And so they could get an idea of what happened so they could report back to Stalin. So, and then they're stuck in gulags for up to 10 years. Yeah. I know he even admits that a lot of this could be just, we're all thinking the same mindset because, the Soviets are forcing us to. Only a few of them, I think only 8 people who left the bunker managed to make it out without getting captured or killed. And Traudl Junge was one of them. So her book is probably one of the most accurate about what happened in the bunker. But the other thing I did not like about the bunker was it focused on Albert Speer and how Albert Speer was the good guy. He was trying to assassinate Adolf Hitler. There's no evidence of that. other than coming from Albert Speer himself. Yes, he refused to implement the Nero order to destroy everything in front of the Allied paths, destroy railroads, bridges, buildings, sewer systems, roadways, because they were insane like that. Oh, the German people let me down. They deserved whatever happens to them.
Right.
Speer was trying to make himself look good. I've read some of Speer's books, and he was dedicated. He even admits in one of his books he cried when he heard that Adolf Hitler committed suicide. Okay, you're not a peripheral Nazi if you're crying when the Fuhrer commits suicide.
No, you're totally immersed.
And he spent, after he was released from Spandau in I think 1966, he spent all of his time bad-mouthing the Nazis, bad-mouthing Hitler. What most people didn't know was Fritz Sauckel was in charge of the labor ministry. He's the one that grabbed the Jews from the concentration camp, Slavs from East European countries, and he was running the slave industry in Germany. But it was Speer who was saying, send 100,000 to this mountain. We need them to dig out a tunnel. They were the one, and every place Speer sent them, they died by the thousands. Fritz Sauckel was executed for it. And he even said at one point during the trials, I can't believe I got the death penalty for doing what Speer ordered me to do. But Speer just for years, he played himself. Then it turned out later, they found out that Speer had stashed away some artwork and that stolen during World War II. And he was making money behind the scenes selling it. So I did not like that. I loved Richard Jordan. Don't get me wrong. I thought he made a Speer. But the movie to me concentrated too much on Speer.
I didn't get through that one.
Yeah, it was made for television, so it
was made for television, and it felt so made for television. Yeah. Even the opening scenes where the guy's walking in the bunker and hesitant about stepping in the water, I'm just like, I cannot sit through this.
Yeah. But it was based on the O'Donnell book, and I read the O'Donnell book, and it is very good. But he states in the book and at the beginning of the movie, this is based predominantly on interviews that are up to 20 years old or more. Because I think I don't think he even started writing the bunker until the early 70s. I don't remember when the book was published. Another thing about the last 10 days that I did not like, and they did it a little bit in the bunker, is Ava did not argue with Hitler. In the last 10 days, Ava and Hitler have this huge argument in the bunker. And the impression they give you is Ava commits suicide to get away from Hitler. And then Hitler is so depressed that Ava killed herself that he shoots himself. She was dedicated and devoted to him.
She waited like 15 years just being a secret mistress before that, what was it? The day before they committed suicide, they finally get married.
The day. The day it was either I think it was the morning of, because they committed suicide later that night. And she came to the bunker for the sole purpose of wanting to be with him, because he always kept her at Obersalzberg.
Mm-hmm.
Stop it, Fred.
Fred disagrees.
Yes. I think Fred's got German blood. She would be at Obersalzberg. Everybody, the high-ranking knew him. I mean, they all knew about Ava. Most people did. Most of the people in the bunker had no clue who she was.
Mm-hmm.
Fred, you want to be locked in the other room? Come on. Go. Of course, it's my cat's fault, too. She's... Sorry.
We got a war going on between the Russian cat and the German dog.
Yeah, the cattleman. No, she was so in love with him, so dedicated to him. that, you know, she went to the bunker because she knew that she would be his number one priority, and that she would be there with him until the end. Though they do make a lot of references, even in Downfall, that she argued with him and that she felt bad. I think wasn't it in Downfall when she was like crying because they were going to execute Fegelein?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, because isn't she related, not directly to, but wasn't that like her sister's husband or something?
Yeah. Fegelein
was in Downfall. They had her begging for his life.
Yeah.
And I watched some documentaries to where they were saying that was not actually true.
No.
About the begging part, I don't really know if they really were family in that respect. I don't really think she argued about anybody that he decided to have killed.
No, she was 100% dedicated and devoted to him. The bunker did have a few little historical inaccuracies like that. One thing I liked about the bunker was they focused more on Hitler in the bunker, unlike in Downfall, unlike the bunker, where the focus was on Speer.
Oh yeah, it was on even the other movie. It was more on other generals.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The Downfall, I mean, was they portrayed him as being highly drugged. Whenever you saw him, he was shuffling around. The actor was great because he kept the hand behind his back, shaking.
I was going to bring that up when I had a chance.
Yeah, he kept his hand behind his back, shaking. And the fits of rage. I mean, the one thing that was true in all the movies was when the generals tell him that, you know, there's no attack, there's nothing to counterattack with. And he tells them, you know, everyone leave. I want to talk to Keitel, Jodl, Krebs, and Bergdorf, you know, and everybody's sort of like, oh, not me. That was true. That has been parodied in so many little videos where they just, since it's in German, they just put in different subtitles, you know,
right.
things like that. But what I also liked about the movie is that while it was very accurate about what was going on inside the bunker, it also showed you what was going on outside the bunker. The character of the doctor, Schwenk, is true.
Yeah. Okay, so all of his interactions and his denying the order to leave Berlin and staying to help the other doctor, that's all true.
That's all true. He stayed, he helped. He actually did go to the hospital that was still in sort of technically the Soviet territory to get supplies. I thought it was extraordinarily accurate. The scenes when they're trying to get back in and they're right in front of the Reich Chancellery and those doors were open on the ground. Mm-hmm. There were air raid shelters built outside the Reich Chancellery for people.
So I didn't understand what those were when I watched it in Downfall. Yeah. I kept thinking, it's like, if that's a doorway in the bunker, why are you just leaving it open? So now I know it was an air raid station, and
they had like a huge out in front of the Reich Chancellery. They had these huge air raid stations, and his is very accurately portrayed. He stayed. He did what he did what he could to help those people. Schwenk got captured when they evacuated. He was in the group that didn't make it out. That didn't make it to safety. They got captured. I'm trying to think. I think Schwenk came back. Hang on a moment. My computer's. Let me see.
No, Sphinx wasn't the older doctor that had the collapsed lung, right? Sphinx was the other doctor, the one that went in to get the supplies while it was still occupied by the Russians.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, because in Downfall, they portrayed him as the group that was escaping and then got surrounded and negotiated not being shot. But I don't know how true that is, to be honest with you.
I read, and I'm going through this stuff trying to figure it out. I got like 5 or 6 things open up on the computer. Schwenk did leave, and he did try to make it out. He did not make it. He got captured, and I think they put Schwenk in with Travel Junger's group just for convenience.
Dramatic effect.
For convenience sake, yeah, because several groups left, and I think of all of them, only the group Travel Junger was in made it out. Which brings me to another point. Historically inaccurate, but somewhat based on truth. The young little boy, Peter something in the movie.
The tank killer.
The tank killer. He was actually based on a real life boy, Alfred Zeck. He was only 13 years old at the time. And if you ever see some of the film footage of Hitler in his last days, he goes outside to meet a whole bunch of Hitler-Jugend warriors, fighters. And it was videotaped because the whole idea was to show, the Germans here, the Fuhrer's in Berlin with us, he'll never let us down. And there's one scene where he goes up to this little kid, Alfred, and pats his cheek.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only historically accurate part of it. Everything else after that was inaccurate. They used that little boy to show what was going on in Berlin. The fighting, the horrors of the warfare, the Volkssturm interfering with the military. And I think they did a fantastic job showing how SS officers were going through the streets executing everyone.
Right.
60, 70-year-old guys weren't at the front. Well, they was shooting them and stringing them up.
Yeah. So, but a question I have for you is, didn't the SS actually round up younger kids like 16, early, almost 20s to battle the tanks in the streets? Wasn't that actually something that happened, just not that little boy?
Oh, yeah, no, there were thousands of young kids, and most of them were like Inga, the girl. Mm-hmm. Most of them were happy to be there. See, the scene when the kid has the big argument with his grandfather,
right?
That was just to prove the point that, you kids get stupid. You've never been in combat. You don't know what's coming.
Right.
And I like the scene when Inga has the other officer shoot her in the chest when the Soviets are coming down the street, because she knew exactly what would have happened to a young girl her age.
Yep.
If the Soviets got hold of her.
Great toy.
One of the things I heard people say that they were disappointed in Downfall was the Battle of Berlin scenes were not vicious enough. That they really didn't show the horror of the fighting, because it was a mass slaughter. Hitler did not allow anybody to leave the city. One good thing about Hitler the last 10 days that I did like, while they'd have the dinner party, they'd have the tea party, which didn't exist. Then they'd cut to the scenes taken during World War II of Berliners carving up dead horses, because that's the only meat they could find.
Right.
But yeah, it was that I did like about it. It showed what was going on outside, to an extent, and it showed Schwenk, who was one of the few heroes who didn't leave. He defied orders, stayed there, and helped out all those, all the German civilians and all of the soldiers. And one thing they didn't do in Downfall, they did talk about it in Hitler the Last 10 Days, was there were thousands of people looking for escape and hospitals in the subway systems. Hitler ordered the subway systems flooded so the Soviets couldn't sneak in under the city.
So they couldn't have escaped or had hospitals down there.
They were all wiped out. they weren't even given a chance to escape. Hitler ordered it, they flooded it, and they killed thousands of people.
Now, I had watched a really graphic documentary that had a lot of footage from back then, and you were talking about how destructive and violent the fight in Berlin was. I have to agree with you. The movie didn't really touch that, maybe but 40%, because what I saw was entire buildings just blown into nothing. The streets had so many dead bodies. I mean, every time they did like a pan down a street where the battle had moved on, you can't even count how many dead people there are. And they're just everywhere, and pieces of them everywhere.
And the aerial shots taken right after the battle.
Yeah. You know, I mean, that city was leveled.
You know, I'm the cautionary tale, and I were in Berlin once, and on Halter railway station used to be it was huge. It was the largest railway station in Central Europe. After the war, they only kept what was left of it. It's part of the facade and the stairway leading up to it. It's no bigger than like an average house is today.
Right. The rest of it's gone.
Yeah, just to show you what it was like.
For me, one of the things I loved about Downfall was you had mentioned the actor spent a lot of time looking at footage. Yeah. Yes. They did that really well. I'll bring up a scene that you touched on. First off, I've seen a lot of footage from of Hitler before this, and I always wondered why he always had one hand behind the back and why it was always doing this. I thought it was just him. I didn't realize it was part of what was happening to him in the last days. So this actor actually, they reenacted the whole scene of when he was going out to meet those young soldiers and give them an Iron Cross, and patting the face and touching the shoulder. And I thought that was brilliant, because that's something I'd seen in other documentaries. So I'm like, okay, they really spent some time. Same thing with Hitler's outbursts. He would go from talking normally, and then he just lost his shit and started screaming at his generals. It really gave me a sense of the madness that he must have been going through in those last days. And some of the dialogue I liked, because 1 minute he's like, these are my people, I will stay to the end. And then he'll spin around and he's like, fuck these people. They're weak. They don't deserve to live. I don't care that everybody's dying out above me. And I'm just like, good Lord, this guy's lost it.
Yeah. And
I found it terrifying to see, to think that somebody is just that nuts. Maybe it was the drugs. I don't know.
Oh, definitely. Let's see. Didn't Hitler have syphilis?
I don't know about that.
There are rumors that he did have syphilis. I think he had it. He might have had it in a younger stage. He definitely did have it. I don't know the medical term for it. He only had one testicle. So
okay.
if you ever hear the song from World War II, the British song, Hitler has only got one ball, Goering, they are small. Himmler has something similar, and poor Goebbels has no balls at all. Yes, he did have Parkinson's disease at the end, but after the war, they found Morell's list of the drugs he was giving him. There was like 54 or 57 different drugs.
Jeez.
Like if he was getting depressed, they wouldn't take him off the antidepressants. They would give him something to cheer him up. So then if he started to get too high, then they'd give him another antidepressant to bring him down. He was getting, one of the movies makes a reference to, he's getting like, crushed up, bull testicles. It was horrendous. Now, there's a book out there that goes into the medical history of Hitler. And and if I'm wrong, somebody let me know. In 1943, he had to go off the drugs. He'd had some type of illness. I think it was respiratory illness or a kidney infection. He had to go off of all the drugs. Within a week, he went back to the same military mastermind from the 1930s. When he did a particular campaign, and it was very successful against the Soviet Unions. And people were like, people have used that to say, if Morrell had not been pumping him up with this, the war might have gone on differently. But by by those last few months, he'd lost the war, the Battle of the Bulge, his last great push, it was a miserable failure. The Soviets had crossed the Oder River. They were advancing towards Berlin,
Mhm.
I mean, nobody ever looked at it. Nobody knows. But I mean, emotionally, he must have been snapping under the pressure anyways.
Right.
But again, they show it in all. Actually, they didn't show it that much in Downfall. They showed it a lot in the bunker in Hitler the Last 10 Days. Goebbels, when FDR died. Comparing it to when Frederick the Great, he was about to lose a major war, and then one of the leaders of one of the countries at war with him passed away, and the war ended, and Frederick the Great survived it. And they talk about that a lot. They only make the one reference to it in Downfall when Trottel-Junger goes into the study to get something, and he's staring at the portrait of Frederick the Great.
That was a weird scene.
Yeah.
Because he totally ignored her and just stared. But I'd seen some documentaries where they talked about his fascination with that painting and the fact that it traveled Europe with him. He was never anywhere without that painting.
No, it was everywhere he went. Yeah, he had that with him. Yes, I'm a cautionary tales. Oh, well, Allison, I know. He was on Pervitin. It's true. I mean, I always joked that I would not be shocked if it turned out that Morrell was working for like the Soviets or the British, pumping them up with medication to screw them up. But that is a wild conspiracy theory. Do not quote me on that. Now, one aspect of the movies that they play on, all three of them, but they really did a good job in Downfall, was Magda Goebbels and the kids.
Yeah. Okay. So I was waiting for you to bring that up. I found that disturbing. That of course, her husband was like the head of SS, right? He was the guy.
No, he was.
No,
Goebbels was the propaganda minister.
Oh, he was the propaganda guy. That's right. Yeah. Now I want to know if it's true. Did he make his wife kill those kids because he didn't have the balls? Because that's the way down. That's what I read out of Downfall.
That's my understanding. The ironic thing was Goebbels became part of the inner circle because he stayed in the bunker. Up until 1945, Hitler could have cared less about him. He was doing his job, but Magda Goebbels and Hitler were extremely close. No indications, no rumors that they were lovers. I don't think Hitler had any sexual desires whatsoever. But they were very close. That's the only reason that Joseph stayed close, because of Magda. So when they were in the bunker, he became the de facto, because you see it in all the movies. Goering says, if I don't hear from you, do you want me to take over? Oh, he's a traitor. We'll have to kill him. Himmler, oh, we're going to have to kill him. And, who took over in Berlin when Hitler shot himself? Goebbels.
He did. Yeah, well, that was a sad thing to know that they were so fanatical that they would kill their kids and each other just for this weird idea. The Aryan, the whole Nazi thing.
Yeah. Allison has it right. She claims she didn't want kids to know a world without Hitler. I also wonder if part of Joseph's attitude was, if the Soviets catch the kids, nothing good's going to happen to them.
That could be part of it. but everything I've ever seen is, even on documentaries, they lean towards this was their fanaticism to where they would go ahead and just kill the whole family.
Yeah.
Only they never said it was. They always said it was. She didn't want her kids to live in a world without the national.
Yeah,
What was it?
National
Yeah.
Social.
Yeah.
Now, I found this interesting. In the movie, the doctor, I can't think of his name, Stumpfegger, I think, comes in and with the drink to give all the kids.
Right.
And I immediately thought, whoa, that's wrong. Everything I read said that they came in and gave the kids injections of morphine to put them under. But apparently there is at least one person who said they saw them giving the sedative as a drink to all the kids. And it is true, apparently, that the oldest daughter knew something was going on and fought against it. But yeah, once all the kids were out, Magda went in to perform it, and she came out and she could not. She couldn't kill her own kids, so she ordered Dr. Stumpfegger to go in and kill them, and he refused. And then apparently Hitler sent word to Stumpfegger, just go in and give him the cyanide.
So that was real. They put the little cyanide glass things in there and crunched it while they were asleep.
They crunched it, and I don't know why they did this. When Goebbels and Magda go upstairs, they both took cyanide. Joseph did not shoot Magda in the chest.
Okay.
She took cyanide and he took cyanide, but I can't remember if he shot himself. If he shot himself and took the cyanide like Hitler did. That's true. That's in some of the movies too, that it was candy laced with drugs. But from what I checked on that, there are 2 or 3 different stories of how the kids were given the morphine to pass out. So, and then they took the bodies of Goebbels and Magda and burnt them. And there's a book out there called The Death of Adolf Hitler. I can't think of the name of it. Came out in the 70s. It was written by the Soviet doctor who performed the autopsies on all the bodies. And there's some horrifying, there's one chair that's very horrifying. They brought the 6 children out, laid them in a row, and at the end is Magda and Joseph burnt to a crisp.
They showed that in Downfall too, that they got burned in the same pit.
No, they got burned in a slightly different pit.
Well, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But,
it's all about what pit you're burned in,
Yeah. But it's a good movie. I always thought the Schwenk portion, the doctor that helped out, was fictionalized. I was really surprised to find out it wasn't. But he never, until this movie, nobody ever talked about him. Now, there's a great book, probably the best book ever written, that doesn't deal so much with the bunker. Cornelius Ryan's, I think it's The Fall of Berlin, in which he talked to American, British, German, and Soviet people that were involved. The Americans and the British on the lines, the decisions, whether we should, like Patton wanted to make the run and steal Berlin.
Right.
The Germans pulled back a lot of the troops from the West, thinking, oh, come on, let the Americans take us. Or I'd rather have, the Americans and the British take us than the Soviets. It's a great book. It's old. It's probably about 40 or 50 years, but it's one of the best books I've read about the battle for Berlin. Now, we got to talk about it. If we don't talk about this, we're going to get some of our people out there watching. Yeah, you know what I'm getting to.
Yep.
Oh, I want to point out one other thing. If you want to watch the worst movie ever made about Adolf Hitler, 1962, Hitler. It's a black and white film starring Richard Basehart from Voyage of the Bottom of the Sea. Richard Basehart is Adolf Hitler. I got to tell you, I watched that. Oh, and John Banner is in it.
John Danner?
John Banner, Schultz.
Yeah.
He's in it. It is one of the worst movies I have ever seen. The way Richard Basehart plays him, it's almost a comedy. I felt embarrassed for Richard Basehart having to do him in the movie. But I was no way I was going to include that in this one. But we all know there's a million conspiracy theories. And I don't know how many of you watched that TV series by, oh God, what was his name? I'm thinking Brett Baer, but that's not it. Yes. Wait a minute. I know bad movie. If I say it's a bad movie, you can trust me. Allison might remember Bob Baer. He was a former CIA officer, an asshole, a complete idiot. He did a series on hunting Hitler, in which they tried to prove 1,001 conspiracy theories of how they snuck Hitler out of the bunker. So, Hitler escaped, and, he's living in Argentina somewhere. If you believe some movies, he's a reptilian riding a T-Rex in Middle-earth named Blondie. That's on Inside too, if you haven't seen it. What do you think of those conspiracy theories?
Most of them are crazy, but there is a part of me that says, since nobody definitively knows, because everybody who would have witnessed the burning of the bodies, they're dead too. So there's no definitive thing saying that they didn't just put some bodies in there that were close to them, burn the hell out of them, and then do whatever else to make it look like, okay, that's Hitler and his wife. Now we've moved it and we're going to hide it over here just to help throw people off. There is a possibility maybe he did survive, but I don't know. I kind of doubt it, but there is a possibility.
I don't believe he survived. I refuse to believe, unless somebody comes up with cold hard evidence. The only way to have gotten Hitler out would have been to fly him out. Hannah Reich and General Grime were the last plane out. Nobody saw Hitler in the plane. Nobody ever reported seeing Hitler in the plane with them or when they landed. The Bob Baer thing talks about how, like, he walked through, the last day. It was, Soviet artillery. The Soviets were 300 yards away, and he walked and crawled through this underground tunnel to a subway system that took him to an airport. No, he was Hitler. He could barely stand outside and give iron crosses to people. And I'm sorry.
Right. He was so racked. And if he did survive, he would be that crippled old junkie, basically, because he would be coming off his drugs. And then just looking at news footage of him back at that time, he was not doing too good. Even witnesses in the bunker were going like, hey, I seen this old guy come up, and I'm like, holy shit, that's Hitler. He didn't look like him.
Jack, you are not supposed to talk about that. We've talked about this.
Oh, the UFO.
South America after the UFO, his friends with the UFOs got him out.
He's hanging out with his buddies, the Yetis.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's going on.
And it's Hitler. It's not like Hitler could walk around the streets of Argentina. Yes, Martin Bormann could get away with it. Dr. Mengele, these people, Hitler's going to stand out in a crowd. I mean, people are going to notice this guy. I think, and this is as far as I will go with a conspiracy theory, I've always wondered why if they went to such details to prevent the body from being found so it couldn't be exploited, you can't just throw gasoline on a body and when the Soviets found the pit with the remains of Eva and Hitler, they used the bridge work that they found there to identify it as Hitler. Now, I always found it really interesting that they went into town, found Hitler's dentist. The dentist's assistant just happened to have the x-rays and the dental records of Hitler, gave it to the Soviets, and the Soviets said, based on the bridge work, we have Hitler. But they did in the 2000s, after the Soviet Union fell, and it was the Russians, they allowed a DNA test to be done on the skull fragment that is in the Soviet archives. The one that, where they say Hitler shot himself, the DNA turned out to be that of a woman.
Big miss there.
I hear noises in the background too, but that's not Fred.
I'm no guys. I'm sorry. That's coming from my house. Obviously, my roommates are cooking and chopping very loud.
Oh.
And because they have a knife, I'm not going to bother them.
I don't mind. I think what might have happened was they brought Hitler. Now, I've heard a conspiracy theory that they never burned Hitler's body in a pit. I don't believe that. Too many people recognize them bringing the body out of the bunker. I think that, and it was just Goebbels, General Krebs, and General Bergdorf, Bormann, and Gunscher, his driver. They burned the bodies as best they could under artillery and ran back in. I think that they probably went out later, the top four, took the remains, buried them somewhere else, threw another body in, set it on fire, burnt it, threw the denture work in. So the Soviets would think, oh, we've got Hitler's body. I can't picture Goebbels and them letting the Soviets get the body so easily. I think, if anything, if it's not Hitler's remains, I think they probably just buried them somewhere else.
Well, now, see, I saw a documentary that said exactly that. After they burned the bodies, and guys, when I'm saying burn the bodies, I'm not saying cremated. Did not burn these down to a skeleton. You could pour 200 gallons of gas in there, and it's not going to take it down to a skeleton, but it will be unrecognizable. The documentary said that these officers, they brought those remains out. They actually took it to another location within that area, obviously, and they buried it under. They buried it in the ground and then threw a bunch of stone rubble over the top. Now, they never say anything about putting other bodies in there, but you would assume that they would have to do that in order to, cheat the Russians out of their prize. So I found that interesting. I wouldn't call it a conspiracy. I just think because there's nobody to actually tell us what happened because they're all dead.
Exactly.
It's to me, that's very probable.
Yeah, because of the 5 people that brought the bodies outside and set them on fire, 4 of them, 3 committed suicide within the next few days. Bormann died while trying to escape. And Gunscher never talked about it, but I can honestly see the 4 bigwigs doing it by themselves behind Gunscher's back.
Yeah, exactly.
So if Gunscher ever gets captured by the Soviets, which I think he was, if he ever gets captured, he says, yeah, that's Hitler's body. And honestly, I think the Soviet generals were just so anxious to give something to Stalin. Because
right, and how's Stalin going to say, no, it's not? They're not. He's not. Yeah. So I did notice in everything I've watched to prepare for the show, there was one factor that was in everything, and that was Hitler's insistence on not having his body found because he didn't want to be exploited, because he already knew what was going to happen. Yeah. And to him, the way one of them explained it seemed to ring more true to me. He felt that if they got his body, then the SS, the whole Nazi movement was completely dead. Yeah. So I don't know if we have time, but I'd like to pop in with something right here. I'm thinking you probably know quite a bit. I watched a documentary just an hour ago that brings you from Hitler as a child, and they kind of correlate different parts of his growing up and when he may have started getting the ideas that he did. So what I learned that I never knew before was that he spent some time as a beatnik artist.
Yeah.
And he was actually quite good. They showed some of the stuff he painted.
Yeah.
He had extreme love of opera, but specifically operas that dealt with gods as the heroes. And they kind of put pieces of what he was teaching in that movement he started. They would attach it saying this might be when he went into this idea, because it was a progression. And his time during the war, there was a part where he was blind for a while.
Yeah.
From an injury, and he got his sight back, and he started telling people that it's because of his heritage and his connection to the gods that he healed. And it was interesting to me to watch this progression. Hitler, before he went completely bonkos and started this movement, he was kind of a unique man. He learned how to talk to people, how to command an audience. I got to see some real footage of him before he made a speech, and they kept the original soundtrack to it. And basically, he stood there in different positions, and he waited till the room got dead silent, which took a while, and then he waited longer. I mean, he literally had everybody's attention. And then he moved into a different aspect of the workers. Not workers union, workers. They were against the socialist, way of life, trying to get the workers better stuff. He was big in that, and they employed him to be a spy to all these other groups.
Yeah.
And they have footage of him at some of these rallies where if they didn't first circle it out, you see this guy step out in the road and look, and it's like, holy shit, that is young Hitler right there.
No, and Hitler being anti-Semitic, conspiracy theory that was government that low, because everybody on the line, all they knew was that the Russians, they were kicking at the Kyiv, the whole thing for Soviet. They were communism in Germany. There's a book out there called, I think it's an old. It was done by a psychologist, and I can't remember if he worked for the Allies in World War II or did it after. The Psychotic God, Adolf Hitler. And he took everything they knew about Hitler and tried to psychoanalyze what he was. As for Jack's question, what was his issue with disabled people? They were
unworthy.
They weren't tall, blonde, because other than like Speer, who among the Nazi leadership was tall, blonde-haired, and blue eyes?
Not many of them.
Goebbels had a club. Himmler was a chicken farmer. Goering was, okay, maybe he was good looking, at the beginning, but then became.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute.
Here's another thing that I found.
I'm sorry, I thought you were Jack.
Yeah, trust me, we're sorry about that, Miss Sight.
Yeah.
No, something that I saw in the Downfall that didn't make a connection till about an hour before the show. They when he was getting married, and they asked him to prove his that he was Aryan. They could never prove that Hitler was full-blooded Aryan.
No.
There were rumors that he may have had Jewish ancestors, and conveniently, the one that they suspected of being Jewish was either missing or dead. I don't remember what they said, but I found that funny because they're all like, "Oh, it's the Fuhrer. Why are you asking that?" And I'm all like, "Shit, he dodged that bullet."
Well, they say, the typical argument is you don't ask the Fuhrer if you're Jewish. But yes,
right,
there is a possibility. While his biological father was German, I'm sorry, both of his biological grandfather, oh, sorry, all four of his biological grandparents were German. But there is a possibility that one of the women, may have had an affair with a Jewish gentleman. So technically, Hitler would be 1/4 Jew. Now, ironically, the Nuremberg trials, the Nuremberg laws, anybody who was 1/4 Jew was spared from everything.
Really?
Yeah.
They drew the line at a quarter.
They drew the line at a quarter. Now, I'm not saying that this is historical, but if Hitler missed that, there may have been, one Jewish ancestry in background, it would make sense, because if you hate the Jews so much, you'd almost remember all of them, not just everybody above water.
Right.
No, he didn't kill any of his family members. As somebody mentioned earlier, he did have like a nephew that tried to mail him and he left. There was Geli Rabal, who was his cousin, who was seen. And some historians claim it was the love of his life. And he was so abusive to her, so possessive, that she committed suicide. Now, there are rumors that, she committed suicide. Niece, right. Sorry, I'm sorry, you're right, niece. Our other resident World War II expert here. And there's some historians, the legitimate historians, seem to think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be involved with anybody. He was so devastated at what happened to her.
Yeah, I'd heard the same thing.
Yeah.
But it was so far. I mean, it was so far in his past. There's no way to really know.
I saw a documentary where the Soviet Union, at the end of every document from all the government houses that were not destroyed, brought them back and they put them into this like basement at one of the ministries or a library in Moscow, and they're there to this day. And I would love to be able to speak German fluently, because I am sure there are things in there that would explain a lot of the historical events and a lot of the mysteries that are there, but nobody's just gone through the papers and opened them up and looked and said, oh my God, look at this.
Right.
Are there any questions from you guys? And we're not talking about UFOs in South America, and we're not going to talk about Hitler being a reptilian from Middle Earth. Along with
what about Nazi killer Yetis?
Along with Sarah Palin, Osama bin Laden.
Right, they're all cousins now.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch Iron Sky 2. It is so off the wall with conspiracy theories. It's a riot. So, well, I'm glad we were able to do this show. Like I said, this was the show Jeff and I were planning on doing. It would have been, if we'd done it, it would have been Jeff's last show. But him and I talked about wanting to do this. We purposely put it on hold until the end of April to coincide with the anniversary. It's a fascinating aspect of history. And to this day, there are still so many questions not answered. So
they're never going to be answered.
No.
This will always be a massive conspiracy thing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's some facts, obviously, but even some of the facts aren't really facts.
Yes, the book is fictional, and the CIA knows that it's fictional. So.
Well, I'm honored I got to do this show with you.
Well, thank you. Hey, I took all the stuff in that book, like whatever happened to Hans Kammler, what happened to the Vril Diamond, to Glocker, and I think I weaved it in. This is because I read, I'm a huge World War II history buff, and I'm the Cautionary Tale made me watch every Ancient Alien show that was on. So after a while, it was just like, I got to put the two of them together.
Time to weave a story.
Yes. Oh, but it was fun to write. All right, Dan, got anything coming up soon?
No, I'm still in holding patterns with publisher.
Okay.
Well, I'm technically still correcting and adding on to the book, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You know how that is. It's never done.
Oh no, it never is. That's why, like, when I finally get it back from the formatter and I put it up and I review it, I don't read it. I purposely just focus to make sure the formatting is done, because I know I'm going to find at least one grammatical or spelling mistake.
Right. For me, it's every time I read through it, it's like, oh, you know what? I should add this. Yeah. And I'll start going to it. And it's like, boy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right, Dan, it was great having you on tonight. I love this topic. We're not sure what our topic will be in the next 2 weeks. We are at some point in the future. We just have to have the time to watch them. We're going to do a show on the historical idiocy of gangster movies.
Oh, that's going to be a fun one.
You know, I mean, just like Bonnie and Clyde and the Untouchables and all of these movies where they just make up so much crap. So
right.
What is this? If one person posts it, I don't mind. If 100 people post it, then I realize I've laxed on my job as editing. So
true, but at the same time, they read it.
Yeah, they did.
There's your silver lining.
Hopefully they didn't return it if it was on Kindle. So. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. If you like the show, hit subscribe and like. Dan, it was great seeing you again. And
always great.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Ciao.